So one of the top three issues that Jackson has to deal with while he's president is called the nullification crisis. And if you don't remember, nullification means the idea that you cannot follow the federal government's laws if you're a state. Or it means that the states have the right to ignore or overturn any kind of federal government rule. So Jackson has to deal with states who want to ignore the federal government, essentially. At the center of this nullification problem is South Carolina, which was hit incredibly hard by the Panic of 1819. Essentially, its production of agricultural products drops far below that of Alabama and Mississippi, and so it can't keep up, and thus it starts to lose money. South Carolina is also one of the few states in the Union where slaves outnumber whites, and so the South Carolina white minority is desperate to avoid losing control of the state in the event of a slave rebellion. So they want the federal government to be more proactive in protecting slavery in the Constitution. They figure that if tariffs are legal, then slavery can be made illegal, and that worries the South Carolina leadership tremendously. So again, the central problem here is the tariff that is imposed by the federal government. And a tariff is a tax or a duty or an extra cost that the government decrees is put on certain items to try and make them more expensive to encourage industry or encourage production elsewhere. So South Carolina doesn't like that the federal government has put a tariff on goods coming into their state because it costs more money. So this man is John C. Calhoun. John C. Calhoun is from the state of South Carolina, which must be why he looks like he's so happy. The problem that he faces is that he anonymously publishes a document arguing for the state's ability to nullify federal laws because, in his words, the United States is a compact of sovereign states. So he's a believer in these United States. The problem lies in the fact that he is Jackson's vice president. This poses all kinds of dilemmas because he is a member of the federal government that he is saying should be ignored, and he works with the president who is putting the tariff on. So he's working against Jackson. This causes them, in part, to fall out, and Jackson and Calhoun stop talking to each other. Daniel Webster, also a smiley, happy person, represents the state of Massachusetts in the Senate, and he responds to Calhoun's first anonymous, and now everybody knows it's Calhoun saying this, and he argues that the people, not the states, made the Constitution. And one of his famous lines, quote, "It is the people's Constitution, the people's government, made for the people, made by the people, and answerable to the people." So the lines are clearly drawn. Either you support the federal government and the Constitution, or you align yourself with South Carolina's idea that you can nullify the federal government. And this debate does not go away anytime soon. So South Carolina, seeing that they were not receiving any support in the federal government for their idea that the tariff needs to go away, calls for the South Carolina's legislature to get together. And they meet, and they vote for an ordinance that declares the tariff to be, quote, "null, void, and no law nor binding upon this state, its officers, or its citizens," in February of 1833. So essentially, they've just told the federal government that they have no intention of following any of the tariff rules. So they are nullifying the tariff. Jackson comes up with a two-pronged strategy to deal with this problem with South Carolina. His first prong takes place under General Winfield Scott, this man here. Jackson goes to Congress and gets authorization for General Winfield Scott to lead the United States Army in an invasion of South Carolina, with the express orders to grab the nullifiers and throw them in jail and or hang them as traitors to the United States. Jackson does this publicly, and Winfield Scott begins to gather his troops in North Carolina and in Georgia for preparation for that invasion. The other strategy Jackson pursues is he sponsors an amendment in Congress that would reduce the tariff by 20% over the next several years, thus allowing South Carolina to retain some face and retain some money, but the tariff would still be in place. South Carolina, weighing their options, decides to opt not to be invaded and decides to accept the lower tariff, which means they accept their ability to not nullify the federal government. But this only lasts for a short period of time and creates a problem that a young man named Lincoln is going to have to deal with when he becomes president, but we'll get there.